Just want to come up here in front of the projector, actually. See, I can blind it. Okay, we have a couple special presentations. The first one, I will let Tom Brennan have the honor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I got to tell you, it gives me great pleasure to read this. Whereas Chief Thomas Palmisano has completed 32 years of dedicated and faithful service to the citizens of the borough of Belmar and the state of New Jersey. And whereas Tom began as a police officer in 1984 and worked his way up the ranks to sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and police chief. And whereas Tom's been a resident of Belmar for over 30 years. And whereas Tom is the proud father of Kristen, Jessica, Brittany, and Rachel. And whereas Tom has also been the owner and operator of Fisherman's Den Tackle Shop in the Belmar Marina. And whereas throughout his career, Tom is focused on serving the residents and visitors of the borough of Belmar with the highest degree of professionalism, and he has worked tirelessly to improve the quality of the lives of the borough's residents. And whereas his allegiance to the borough of Belmar and the oath he first took on March 10, 1984, have reflected great credit upon himself, the Belmar Police Department, and our community. The mayor and council take great pleasure in recognizing Tom Palmisano's long and faithful service, which culminates on April 1st, 2016. And now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council and all of the residents of Belmar that Chief Thomas Palmisano be commended for his many years of dedicated service.
Thank everyone, and I have to say, all the years I've been in Belmar, I wouldn't want to work anywhere else. The residents are great, the town is great, the mayors and councils that I've worked under, I have to say it's pretty common. The chief that hired me, his name was Jack Minuti, and now that I'm leaving, we have pictures of every chief in headquarters, and mine will be right under his. It's just funny that that's how it worked out, that that's the chief that hired me. And like I said, I'm going to miss it, but it was a good run, and I have great co-workers, and there's really not much more I can say. It was just a great career, and I'm still going to be here. I'm not going nowhere. I live in Belmar. I love living here. My predecessor, Andrew Heisman, how you guys could call him. And I just want to thank everybody for letting me have the career I had. Thank you.
And the next special presentation, I will ask Janice to run with. I'm the official mic adjuster.
That one was exciting, but this one's just as exciting. This is a resolution from the Borough of Belmar honoring Mildred Pachota, I'm sorry. Whereas Mildred Pachota will be honored by friends and relatives on the occasion of her 100th birthday on Sunday, March 20th, 2016. Whereas she was born on March 20th, 1916, and has been a resident of Belmar since 1956. And whereas she became the wife of Anthony P. Pachota on November 21st, 1955. And whereas Mildred has been an active in the Monmouth County Association for the Blind since 1965, including serving 3 terms as president and also holding the offices of vice president and treasurer over the course of her 51 years of membership. Mildred is also a current member of the New Jersey Commission for the Blind, chairing 3 state conventions over her long tenure. Mildred is also a longtime member of the Salvation Army and the Soroptimists. And whereas, during the long and productive lifetime she has demonstrated in countless ways her dedication to the welfare of others and has earned the respect and affection of people from all walks of life and all ages. And whereas, she has lived during the most eventful century of this world's history and in her quiet way has been a force for good and a stabilizing influence on those around her during these turbulent years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Belmar hereby honor Mildred Pichuta on this occasion of her 100th birthday with sincere congratulations and best wishes for many more happy and productive years ahead.
So Mildred doesn't get out quite as much as she used to, but we'll be delivering it to her house with the mayor a little later this week.
And the last special presentation is to announce March 2016 Belmar First Responder of the Month. And that goes to Jack Leonard. I think you were surprised. Oh, someone blew. Jack is a critical member and leader of the Belmar First Aid. Jack consistently volunteers his time to Belmar, representing First Aid at Safety Day and school functions. Jack coordinates Belmar First Aid during major functions such as the Belmar St. Patrick's Day Parade and Seafood Festival. Jack's dedication to Belmar and Belmar's First Aid is exemplary. He gets awesome hat. Oh, you got nice hair though. Sorry. A beautiful certificate.
Oh, there you go.
Nice. $100 courtesy of the BBP to spend as you wish in town. And your photo on the Route 35 sign. Everybody look forward to taking pictures of on
Actually, it's more the members of the Belmar First Aid that make things like this happen. Rather than me, all I do is take care of ordering stuff and make sure the paperwork's done. The people like Bruce and Nancy and everybody else that turns out for the calls, when they happen, whether it's 6 at night or 3 in the morning, they're the ones who really deserve this.
Now we're moving on to the public bids for the 13th Avenue food truck. All those present to bid on the 13th Avenue food truck, please come forward. State a minimum bid of $1,500.
If you're here to bid on 13th Avenue food truck, come on up.
Please check in with April and give a $500 deposit, bid deposit.
Oh, the one coming, yeah, everyone else put your bids in. So as April checks everybody in, just to overview the process for you, we're gonna start minimum bid at $1,500 a month. The leases are active from May through September, 5-month lease, so whatever you're bidding is a per month rent. We're gonna start the bidding at $1,500 a month. First, I'm gonna ask you to go through and state your name and what company you represent, so the council knows who you are. You'll signify that you agree to stay in the bidding by raising your hand as the councilwoman proceeds with the bidding until there are 2 of you. Then you will go head to head. And you pick the numbers. It has to be in a minimum $100 increment as you bid against each other. Clear? Okay. Would you tell us your name and company?
Frank Nazaro, 2000
Okay.
Steve DiGiovanni and Frank Rizzo, Urban Burger.
Mariana Padilla, I have a restaurant in Rock Beach, Sweet Pepper Restaurant.
Abby Taylor.
Pliables, Robert Giuliani, Pliables. Daniel Becker, Four Woods Concessions.
Kathy Slinsky for Hillary Collin only.
Okay, so just checking, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right?
3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay. All right, we are going to start, everyone, minimum bid is 1,500, okay? A raise of hands, who will bid 2,000? 2,000 a month?
Looks like everyone.
Okay, looks like everyone.
Everyone.
All right. We're going to do $500 increments, and anybody raise their hands for $2,500 per month? Okay, looks like everyone. 3,000 per month,
All in.
all in. 3,500 per month.
We had
All right, we're
somebody
just
drop out.
checking. Okay.
Who dropped
Okay,
out?
2 out.
Okay.
Yes, when you are out, if you could sit down, that would help us a lot.
Okay.
Well, we should now announce who dropped out, so that would be
Hillary Collin.
Hillary Collin and
Diana.
Diana, okay.
Okay.
Diana, what's your last name?
Padilla.
Thank you.
We have 4 remaining, and we're at 4,000. 4,000 per month.
We got 5 remaining, don't we?
2, 3, 4. 4 remaining.
4 remaining.
Started
There were
with 6.
6 initial.
2 dropped out.
1, 2.
1.
2, 2, 2, 1. Hold hands.
Oh, okay, Abby Taylor, Pliable.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
4,000.
I just want to take a step back. 4,000? Susan? Okay, we've got all 4. 4,500.
All in.
All in. 5,000 a month?
3 in. So
We've got that.
4 boys dropped
4
out.
boys dropped out.
Okay. 5,500 per month. We've got 3 still in. 6,000. We've got 6. 6,500.
All right,
Pliables
Pliables
dropped
is
out,
out.
6,500.
So the 2 remaining, if you could go to the mic. Now you'll bid head-to-head by minimum $100 increments, starting at 60.
So we're at 6,500.
Who has the bid is, oh, okay.
They both
We have 66,
60.
67, 68. We're sitting at 68. We got 268, 69. 7,000 a month. 7,100. 71.
Going once,
Going once.
going
Going
twice.
twice. Congratulations.
Okay, let's announce the winner.
Yes. You guys, each took up 15
If you place a deposit down at the deposit, please pick up your deposit. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, guys.
We're going to start the workshop discussion. These are council discussions. All presenters are presenting to the council. Only questions are from council members. We're going to begin with Councilwoman Keon Blackburn.
If you've read the paper over the past several months, fracking it's not really done here in New Jersey. We probably don't have the type of slate and rock that's needed. There is a problem with transporting the wastewater from fracking. I've been doing a little bit of reading on it, but I know there is a person in the audience who has done quite a bit of reading, Alicia Barskowski, and I'm probably tripping over all these names tonight. Unfortunately, nobody is Smith. But Alicia, if you'd like to come up and take about 5 minutes or so to tell us the pros and cons on wastewater from fracking and the problems with it in New Jersey.
So fracking is a technique that is currently used and is happening right in our bordering state of Pennsylvania. It's used to extract natural gas. Drillers need to inject massive amounts of water, toxic chemicals, and sand to break up deep rock formations during hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. To date, over 600 chemicals have been discovered in fracking fluids. The wastewater includes total dissolved solids, heavy metals, and radioactive chemicals extremely harmful to humans and wildlife. And every day, the oil and gas industry generates 10.5 billion gallons of this wastewater. This massive amount of wastewater that comes back after fracking poses major disposal problems. It is so complicated to treat that there are no facilities that can safely purify it, though some treatment plants accept the waste, jeopardizing our drinking water. The federal government hasn't even issued treatment guidelines yet for fracking waste. Fracking waste must be banned in our New Jersey municipalities so it doesn't find our way into our water system. Gas companies have already dumped toxic and radioactive frack in New Jersey, and without local protection against fracking waste, there's nothing to stop the oil and gas industry from continuing to use our state as a dumping ground. The support of local government is vital to protect our public health, our communities, and water supply from this dangerous pollution. Elizabeth, Edison, South Brunswick, Neptune, Aberdeen, Red Bank, and Highland Park all did the right thing and protected the health of the residents by passing an ordinance to ban this waste. We are in need of local legislation to prevent transfer, treatment, disposal, storage, and application to a roadway or otherwise release into the environment of these fracking wastes. Protecting our surrounding waterways, wildlife, and town is top priority for me. I feel lucky enough to live here for the past 3 years and be able to take advantage of all the great activities we have: swimming, paddleboarding, the beaches, and parks. I want to be able to keep it that way and ensure our surrounding waters and wildlife do not have to ignore risks that could jeopardize their existence and safety for years. I don't ever want to worry that fracking waste can make it into our town, let alone through my own faucet and drinking water. Please help me to consider banning fracking waste from coming into Belmar, and let's be the first beach town to set that example.
Thank you.
You know what, I do, just a couple of questions. I don't need to
Just a
wait
couple
response.
questions.
Okay. I just want to see how much information you can give us. These towns you mentioned, do you know exactly what kind of ordinances they banned, any kind of treatment facilities, or they just banned transportation through their municipalities?
It was both, and then they posed a fee if they brought it in, like $2,500 into the town.
Just to drive through, or to try to do any kind of treatment?
To try and drive through treatment, and to use it. Sometimes this fracking waste is used in a diluted version as brine for salting the streets before snow. So that's the way it makes ways into our waterway.
Well, we'll make sure we don't do that.
Yeah.
Were they able to, in Belmar, we're obviously not really a site where anybody would be looking to set up a treatment facility. Basically, we're talking about, I would assume they're transporting by truck, and we're talking about going up and down Route 35. So these other municipalities, so they had state highways that they were able to influence with their ordinances?
I haven't.
That's what we would
Okay.
question. I mean, we pass an ordinance that says it can't come through Belmar.
Okay.
Does that mean we can say, okay, even though it's a state highway, it's in our town, and we don't want those trucks coming through? I mean, that would really be the nub of the question.
At this point, I think what I would recommend is if council wants to pursue some kind of local ordinance here or a resolution, you really have that ability to decide whether you're just speaking against it by way of a resolution or creating law through an ordinance. We can research some best practices around the state and see what other towns are doing.
So, hey, you know, like the other charge, if they're gonna be able to come through anyway, you should charge them and make them pay for it. You know, I absolutely agree with you. It's the stuff that they're doing with it. They have no idea. We really haven't had any idea since they started using the technology what they're gonna do with the waste. All they knew was that it worked to get out the gas they wanted to sell, which is, you know, that's all well and good, but we still live with, what are we going to do with the waste from nuclear power plants, and how long has that been going on? And now we have this whole new technology, what are we going to do with this waste? And until they find some kind of solution, I just don't think it's right to, trucking up and down the state highways in New Jersey. They want to do it in Pennsylvania, keep it in Pennsylvania, deal with it there, it's your problem.
Yeah, they don't know what to do with it, so they'll go to a town and say, we'll give you an amount of money if you take this waste and you dispose of it, or you use it, and give them different solutions, like I said before, like using it for salting the streets and diluting a version of it onto our roadways. So that's what they use to entice towns to take this waste. But I just want to make sure that that never happens in Belmar, that we'll never use that type of waste.
In the study that I've done, or the looking that I've found, Elizabeth, South Kearney, and Carteret are already accepting it for storage in those towns. Highland Park has passed an ordinance, but where Highland Park sits, they could actually be drilling like they do. The ground is different than what we have here. Middlesex County freeholders have passed a ban. And what I found, I didn't know about Neptune or Red Bank. I did see New Brunswick and Hillsdale had resolutions. So I think it's something that we can look into a little bit more.
Thank you. Okay, next workshop discussion is Lake Como Police Services. I'll ask for the assistance of Colleen, please.
I just wanted to introduce you and explain the presentation you're going to see tonight. It's actually two-phased. We have had a good deal of conversation over the recent weeks and months about Lake Como's police services. They issued an RFP, as you know, back in November, I believe it was. Belmar was the only town that responded. You're going to see two presentations tonight. First, I'd like to introduce two friends from the state of New Jersey, Rick Ricciardella and Christine Caruso, who are going to be doing a presentation essentially from a higher view of policing in Belmar and Lake Como. They're going to be talking about specifically some of the issues in Lake Como's budget and some of the benefits that can be seen from a contracted service. And then after the state is done, I'm going to ask Captain Drew Heisman to come up, who is really going to address purely how Belmar will be policing should a contract come into execution. So again, the state's going to provide us an overall view, and then Captain Heisman will come up and specifically not talk about Lake Como, but talk about how Belmar polices and how that can be applied through a contract. So with that, Rick and Christine.
Thank you. Good evening. We were asked to give the same PowerPoint presentation that we gave to the Lake Como residents and the members that were present at the Lake Como Police Department who were there. Basically, it's a presentation, excuse my back, presentation on a dissolution for the Lake Como Police Department. A little bit about myself. I'm a retired police chief, and I work with the Department of Community Affairs. I'm the state fiscal monitor. I monitor some of the major cities in state of New Jersey. I'm particularly assigned to Camden and Newark. But from my background, I have a subject matter expert in policing. Tonight, I have my deputy director, Christine Caruso, is working with me. She's my immediate supervisor from the state that works with me on the Distressed Cities program. A little bit about myself. I got 44 years almost. April 1st will be 44 years involving law enforcement. 26 as a local police officer, 7 as the chief of police in Essex County where I work. 16 years I've been with the state of New Jersey, Department of Community Affairs, Division of Local Government Services, as their public safety liaisons. 2 years I worked as a subject matter expert with the International City County Managers Association. That's where I learned a lot of this dissolution and shared service things that go on throughout the state and the United States. And recently I completed the Camden Metro Police Initiative. For those of you who are not aware, the governor took a very bold step and we dissolved the Camden Police Department and we created a new Metro County Police Department down in Camden. The bottom line was what we were able to get for 280 police officers, we were able to get 401 police officers, and we were able to put a dent in some of the crime, and the budget remained the same over that period of time. Some myths about policing. People are under the understanding that, you have more police, you'll have less crime. That's not true. Crime is based on economics, and in many of the PowerPoint presentations that we did, in fact, I'm working on one right now in Atlantic City. I'm sure everybody's aware of Atlantic City. Atlantic City had 693 police officers at one time, and they had 7 homicides. They have 285 police officers right now, and they have 5 homicides. So that's the myth about police officers and less crime. So you have to be particularly perceptive of what's going on with that. More importantly, what police officers want to do is give a perception that it's good to live in this community and address quality of life issues. That's the perception that they should be giving for policing. The purpose of the presentation is to provide a fair, consistent, and judicious analysis that promotes efficiency, effectiveness, and performance for the welfare of all parties concerned, Lake Como and Belmar, while exercising fiscal restraint. Lake Como can't afford the police department, so they're looking to contract with Belmar, and Belmar, being a good neighbor, is considering providing the police services. Some of the desired outcomes is to propel Lake Como into the 21st century by adopting innovative best practices that we hope that Belmar has, that they'll be fiscally responsive to the solutions regarding police staffing levels. We're going to try and provide some relevant facts and examples so that everybody can look at these and study them and see what's best for the 2 communities. We profess that there's no one right way or one-size-fits-all approach. You have to look at everything when you're looking at a police department. And this presentation is not the opinion of the state of New Jersey, the Department of Community Affairs, the Division of Local Government Services, but it is my opinion as a subject matter expert as to how we can set this police department up. Some facts. The borough's fiscal crisis that we're having, like so many other New Jersey municipalities, Lake Como is also suffering and struggling with economic uncertainty. I think we've been suffering down this path for quite some time, since about 2008. There's some fiscal challenges that are affecting all aspects of municipal government, and in this particular case, the police department is the most significant fiscal responsibility in Lake Como, and we are addressing that with this PowerPoint. Obviously, budgets are increasing. Everybody's feeling the pressure, and there's also taxpayers' concerns. Some additional facts. By doing the dissolution, we're removing some of the layers of administration. We're going to be saving about $1 million in Lake Como. We're going to give Lake Como the tools to operate within the 2% cap. For those of you who are not familiar, when the governor took over, he imposed a 2% cap. The budgets can't go up more than 2% every year. And the police department's budgets sometimes do go up more than that with healthcare costs and collective bargaining. And we're also going to eliminate some of the day-to-day crisis and overtime issues within the Lake Como Police Department. Asbury Park Press on December 5th, in one of their editorials, stated that the police contracts that are in Lake Como are unsustainable. Police officers can receive up to 14% longevity towards their base salaries. Officer making about $101,000, about $14,000 in longevity, gives them about $115,000 a year. Overtime in the police department was between $12,000 and $18,000 in 2014 for 5 top police officers. The union received contractual raises in 2012, 13, and 14 of 2%, and an additional 1.5% in 2015, totaling about 7.75% when it's compounded out. And they also receive funds, overtime, extra pay for working on holidays. What are we worth? This is another article that the Asbury Park Press put out regarding Lake Como, about police officers making $101,390 in the Lake Como Police Department as the top pay officer. They also mentioned that there's perks in their contracts that are for longevity, college incentive, 15 days sick. They talked about a $15,000 payout, 30 vacation days each year after 20 years of service, 3 personal days, plus 2 additional personal days if they're not out sick annually. Again, these are all the items that the Asbury Park Press did on their research. What we have going on in Lake Como is political will. You need the political will to want to do something with this. Even though you have adversarial groups that are saying don't do it, I think the mayor and the council in Lake Como are realizing the fact that they can't make their budget, that they're being shortchanged, and they have to do something. It's great that we have third parties doing consultant work, which is something that I told you that we used to do with the international city county managers. But it's more important when you have the stakeholders, who are the people in this room, the people in Lake Como, and of course the state of New Jersey, who is involved with the presentation and helping the 2 cities accomplish this. So you're going to get the help from the state as a consultant to help you with the program. Are there cultural changes? Yes, there are. Are these impossible challenges? No. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the guys in Lake Como, maybe tough in Belmar for the new chief who's going to be taking over to deal with this, but it's not impossible. There's a little short-term issues in the beginning, but we'll be here to work with both municipalities to work this out. We dealt with a lot of adversity when we did Camden, and that was a learning curve for us, and I don't think there's anything that we can't work through. So we plan on working through these issues. These are just some of the issues that you come up with that you have to deal with, civil service laws and things of that sort. And of course, we need to work with the union officials so we can work through this. What we have right now is total of 30 police officers, 10 sworn, 1,738 people living in 0.2 square miles with a $1.9 million budget, with about $123,000 of it is for Class 2s. For those of you who don't understand Class 2s are the officers who come here and work in the summer. The laws from the state of New Jersey allowed Class 2 officers to be hired to work in resort communities because they did an influx of population in those communities. So we spend $123,000 for Class 2s in Lake Como. In Belmar, we have 20 sworn officers, 2 non-sworn, population of 5,751. It's 1 square mile, and you're spending $3.5 million for 20 officers, 1.9 for 10 officers in the other community. Some of the things that we do when we're putting a police department together is we like to use some of the standards that are set up from the New Jersey Attorney General's Office, Department of Law Enforcement. So we use their guidelines. We use some things from CALIA, which is the national standards down in Washington and Fairfax, Virginia, who puts standards together for the police department. We try to develop all of those models, rules, and regulations when we're trying to put a police department together. And of course, these are civil service towns, so we have to take into consideration that we have to take in the New Jersey Civil Service Commission when we talk about the solution of a police department. One of the things that we need to do is to come up with a patrol methodology. And the International Chiefs of Police have a methodology that figures out how many police officers that you need. It's not like it's subjective where somebody just says, hey, we need 10 cops, or we need 20 cops to work in a community. So there's an actual formula that the International Chiefs of Police have came up with for an assessment on a police department. So that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So you can't say, hey, Brett, how'd you come up with that we need 10, or we need 4, or we need 8 police officers? It's written right here in the formula for the police department for the Lake Como Police. What we just talked about, the International Chiefs of Police program. How often do officers come to work? Well, we have to evaluate. Mostly the national standard for people coming to work is about 2080. Everybody works 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, comes out to about 2080. But when you look at a police officer, he doesn't come to work 2080 because he has to take vacation time. It's a job that has to be covered for 24 hours, 7 days a week. So you have to take into consideration that there's going to be leave time to have to cover this, or what they call a relief factor. So it's important that you understand the fact that you just don't think that officers just work 40 hours a week. They get vacation time, they get sick time, they get training time, which you'll see up here on the screen. So it's important to know how often do police officers come to work, or the police officer's availability number. In this particular case, we've averaged out that most officers come to work between 1,700 and 1,800 hours. What I mean by that is you take 2080, then you subtract out how many vacation days they have, how many sick days they may have, how many days they need for training. The Attorney General's office requires that police officers train twice a year for firearms. It has to be in the morning, it has to be in at night. So they have to require that training. When they do that training, nobody's working in the Lake Como Police Department. They have to go someplace else to do that training. So those are days that are taken away from the 2080. Some of the explanations on calls for service. Again, when you're looking at a police department for calls for service, you have to look at what does a police officer do during the day. Well, a third of his day is he's riding around looking for hazards, stopping motor vehicles. They call that unobligated time. Those are the technical terms that the International Chiefs of Police came up with. So 1/3 of his day is being spent riding around, stopping motor vehicles, calling in hazards, or maybe going to a detail, crossing guard, something of that sort, to cover a traffic detail. That's 1/3 of his day. The other third of his day is when dispatch calls him on the telephone and says to him, I want you to go to 123 Main Street and take a report of a stolen snowblower. He goes there, responds there, and when he gets to the scene, he writes the report. That's the other third of his day. So the first third, he's driving around looking for hazards or stopping motor vehicles. The next third is going to the call, and the next third is he's taking the actual report. You have to keep that in mind, because when you're doing the formula, they want you to divide everything by this 3. This 3 is the thing that, when you put the formula together, tells you how much your officers are coming to work, and then what you're spending on your third of your day. A little complicated. It took me many years to understand it. It's not an easy formula to understand, but it's the formula that's used by the International Chiefs of Police for coming up with staffing. This is what it looks like when you're looking at a department. A third of their day is spent riding around looking for hazards. Another third of their day is taking calls. The other third is writing reports. Again, when you're looking at 911 calls when they come in, citizen-initiated calls, officer-initiated calls. He's stopping cars, he's calling in hazards, doing administrative tasks. Take your car down to the DPW and have it repaired, fix the wiper blade, the light's out, go get the car washed. Directed patrols, I want you to give Town Hall tonight extra attention. You're anticipating a large crowd for something. So that's a directed patrol that's going to be handed out. You add all those calls up and you put them into the call box. In Lake Como, we have 1,562 calls for service. These are 911 calls that are dispatched out of the dispatch center. In Belmar, you have 7,988 calls. That's dispatched. Not what the officer's doing, not when he's stopping somebody for disorderly persons, not when he's looking at somebody who's urinating on your front lawn, not when there's a noise, but when the people call up on the phone and call 911 and say, I need a police officer at my home. That's the calls that go up onto the calls for service. In this particular case, we have about 9,550 calls for service combined for the police department. Now, I have an asterisk on Lake Como, because when we asked Lake Como for their calls for service, they were only able to give me 9 months of calls for service. So I had to prorate their calls. And when I prorated it, their 911 calls came up to 1,552 calls per year. So when you're doing the calls for service, you have to factor in all this information into that formula that you saw previously that I had up on the board. With the officers, how much they're coming to work versus times the 3, which is the 3, again, how much you're taking for hazardous calls, how much you're going on calls for service, and how many times you're writing a report on something. That's the 3 that you put up in there. This is what it looks like when you're talking about it. Calls for service are 1,562. They spend, we think, about 30 minutes on a call. What I mean by that is when they go to somebody's house on a barking dog, or they go to somebody's house on a domestic violence, where they respond to a DWI, when you throw everything into the pot, they spend about 30 minutes on the call. Keep in mind, I put that number in there because Lake Como could not provide that for me in their dispatch. So it's very important that you understand, I had to put that number in there. This is what it looks like when it's written out. Calls for service, 30 minutes on a call. When you multiply it all out, I know it's confusing when you're looking at it. Like I said, it takes a long time to learn this and understand it. But in actuality, Lake Como only needed 1.3 police officers to patrol their community, based on their calls for service and how much time they're spending out on a job. That's what it looks like when you put all the numbers in the formula. 1,500 calls for service, 30 minutes an average call, times 3. Again, the 3. How much the officers come to work? 1,750 hours comes to 1.33 police officers. Again, when you look at how we add it up, 1,562 calls, half, 30 minutes, 781. You bring the 781 up here, you multiply it times 3, gives you 2343, divided by how often the officers come to work, 1.3 officers. This is what it looks like when you're looking at a call for service based on your budgets. So if you look at Lake Como, at 1.9, every time a citizen calls a 911 dispatch, it costs $1,216 to send that police officer to that person's house. Raccoon attacking the garbage, people urinating on my lawn, whatever it might be. When they hang up that phone on 911, It's costing the citizens $1,216 to send a police car to that house. In Belmar, it costs $457. So you can see the big difference between Belmar and Lake Como with the costs. We want it to be fair, to cost out both communities. Investigations. There's another formula for when you're doing investigations. You have to figure that you're going to have 1.3 police officers for the police department, but if you're doing investigations in the department, you have to have somebody that's actually going to come out and investigate crimes. So it's important that you put investigator formula together. And again, this comes from CALIA, which is like the Bible for the police departments in Fairfax, Virginia. What we had, 2 municipalities in 2014 had together 340 Part 1 crimes. Part 1 crimes, what are they? They're right up here on top. Murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Those are Part 1 crimes. Those are the crimes that the New Jersey State Police collect from the police department every year when they want to ask them, how much crime did you have in your community? That's what we're looking at. Lake Como reported 41 crimes with 10 police officers. Belmar reported 299 Part 1 crimes with 20 officers. So we have 340 crimes with 30 police officers combined. Keep in mind, 95% of the crimes are larcenies, burglaries, crimes of property, not violent crimes. 95%. That's very, very good. So when you're doing the methodology for figuring out how many detectives do I need to patrol these communities, there's a formula, like I said earlier. So we put that formula up on the board. We have found out that when you're dealing with Part 1 crimes, you need about 80 to 120 Part 1 crimes to figure out how many detectives you need. So I just told you that we had like 340. So when you divide it, looks like that. You divide 80 and 120 into 340, and you come up with how many detectives you need for the two communities. About 4.2 detectives to 2.83 detectives. I think Belmar has 4 detectives. So it's kind of like right in the right mix. By the way, Lake Como has no detectives. Belmar has 4, Lake Como has none. Cost analysis, very interesting. So when I call 911 in Lake Como, and I say my bike was stolen, when that cop comes to your house and takes the report, if he did it just on Part 1 crimes, it's costing $46,341 to send that police officer to your house to take a bike theft. It costs $12,223 in Belmar for the amount of crimes that you have. So you can see the difference. And you can see one of the reasons why Lake Como wants to get out of the business of being in the police department. So the solution that we gave them was the dissolution of the police department and contracting police services with Belmar. So based on it, the residents, there's 1,738 residents in Lake Como, and they're paying about $1,093 for a police officer. And on the households, they're paying about $2,400 towards the police department. So you see, it's getting kind of expensive. And as you saw earlier, the raises keep going up, and it's hard to sustain this kind of protection. So Lake Como's coming up with the idea that we contract police services with Belmar. Again, going back over some of the costs, it's costing $1.9 million. Belmar has suggested that they would pay, that Lake Como would pay Belmar $914,000 plus the cost of the SLEOs, which was $75,000, which would cost $989,000. Again, going back to how much Lake Como's paying and how much Belmar's paying per crime, per call. Are they understaffed? Yes. Is Belmar understaffed? No. And you can see the cost of policing in the two departments. And again, they do not have a detective. Belmar has 4 detectives. So they could easily work together on putting the detectives in there. If we were to show what the cost is on the departments and the savings to Lake Como, it's about 47.9% to them. They're going to go from paying almost $2 million for a police department to paying $989,000. Staffing level. Again, this is something that I put together using the calls for service that we had between the two towns. And it looks like Lake Como would have started out with 10. Belmar has 20, would be a total of 30. I'm proposing that the 2 police departments could work comfortably with 24, which would be a savings of 6. If Lake Como were to have their own police department today, it would cost them about $2.4 million for a chief or a public safety director, whatever the governing body decided to go with. Presently, they have a lieutenant, they have 2 sergeants, 8 officers, 1 detective, because they don't have any detectives over there, so we have to give them at least 1 detective, and 13 sworn officers, plus the cost of the SLEOs, 1 administrative assistant, so it would be about 13 police officers or $2.4 million to have an ideal Lake Como Police Department. That's what the table of organization would look like in Lake Como, with a chief or public safety director, a lieutenant, the patrol division. These officers would work 12-hour shifts, squads A, B, C, and D, the detective, and then your SLEOs out there on your right. Again, the New Jersey State Police put out formulas, just like the International Chiefs of Police put out, and their formula tells us that there would be 3.9 police officers working in Lake Como. 3.944, based on 2.3 police officers per 1,000 working in Monmouth County. Again, when we talk about how much it would go up, I understand that they're going to have a referendum in Lake Como, and if the people vote for the referendum, it could want to keep the police department, it could increase their taxes by $713 per year each household. That's just for the police department only. Or 24%, 20% increase. Again, just some of the guidelines. We have to keep the lines of communication open, cooperation. We have to be creative. Again, the state will stand by both communities trying to work through their problems, whatever error issues that they have, that we can try to correct. It's a dissolution of the police department, not a shared service. We have to emphasize that to you. And there's a lot of courage being taken here in Lake Como, the mayor and the governing body that are standing up to do this, even though it could ruin their political careers. They feel it's the right thing to do. So again, the state's here to try and help them do that. What's next? We got to form a working group. I guess the working group will work with the people over here in Belmar. But on the working group, it'll be a mayor in Lake Como with 2 council members, the new Belmar police chief. Aren't you glad you're retiring? The Lake Como CFO and business administrator, and of course, DCA and DLGS will be part of the working group to work through any of the problems that they have. We plan on meeting twice a month for the first 6 months to discuss the outstanding issues and concerns, and then create a smaller group once we get things rolling, and we can meet maybe once a month just as a general practice to go over issues in both departments. This is what it's going to cost Lake Como on their budget and the referendum per $400,000 home. That's what the Lake Como people gave us as a chart to put into the PowerPoint presentation. And to the members of the governing body here in Belmar, questions?
So if we can have council return to the dais, and if you have any questions for Rick, you can ask them at this time before we proceed.
Sure.
Any council members with questions for Rick before we proceed?
I had one. Yes, I mean, really, any particulars we discuss here right now are all hypotheticals, because people in Como decide what they want to do.
Right.
I think the mayor and council are making the right solution. I think we have to decide if they want to spend the money, more power to them.
I commend the members of the Belmar governing body for stepping up with the RFP. It will be a worthwhile project for both communities.
It's supposed to be a win-win, but they have to decide what they want to do.
I concur.
So when this first came about, I guess it was because of their difficulties with their budget. This was just stood out as being great savings. Is that kind of why they pursued that and other options?
I don't think they could afford their budget anymore, so they needed to make some cuts. Let me just explain to you what happens, like behind the scenes. I think this might have started in January of 2015. Excuse me. When the mayor and the CFO and VA came into our office to meet with our financial regulations people and said, we can't afford our budget. We're priced out, we can't make our budget, we're gonna have a deficit, we're not gonna be able to pay our bills. So from that point on, under the umbrella of the Department of Community Affairs, we try to help work with the communities. We look at their budget, look for reserves, one-shots. I mean, same thing, just like you guys have in a small town, like we have in the state of New Jersey, one-shots. Well, we look for anything that we can to try and make ends meet, to make everything balance, okay? And they were telling us that they were gonna operate in a deficit. So based on that, our people start to drill down on their budget. And one of the solutions that they came up with was to do a dissolution of the police department, see if somebody else can control your town. So that was one of the items. So based on financial regulations coming up with that idea, and they pass it off to me, who is the subject matter expert in policing, who we think can try and maybe broker a deal with the municipalities, whether it be working with the municipality, working with the unions, getting concessions, anything that might work to make ends meet so that the city balances, at a zero and not being in a deficit. We come up to do that. With all the expertise that we had looking at their budget, wasn't possible. So we went to the next step of dissolving the police department and how much it would cost and how much they would be able to, for poor choice of words in this room, save monies to make both ends meet. And therefore, that's how we arrived at this point right now. But in between that time, we've had many, many meetings with the mayor and the council and the CFO, both in Trenton and in their offices, to try and bring a solution. But the only solution that we could come up with was the dissolution of the police department.
And And the amount that you had shown was $714 per household increase each year?
Yes,
$714.
it's not one time. Every year thereafter, they would feel that increase in their budget. And I'm being told, and again, I'm not a budget guru, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an accountant, I'm just a lonely police chief. I was told that in 2 or 3 years, they'll be back at our office. If that thing goes through, and if people decide to pay the $713 in 2 to 3 years, they'll be back into BCA because things are just going to keep escalating with the cost of running a department, with the cost of health insurance rising to double digits, police department's cost of insurance, I'm being told that, I can't stand on that to say that that's absolutely positive, but I've been around, this isn't my first rodeo, I've been around the block, and I've seen towns come into programs, go out of the programs, and within 2 to 3 years, come back into programs again because, different items happen that's creatable for things that happen in municipalities.
How many other towns, you said that Camden has, for lack of other words, been taken over by the state, the police department. How many other towns are doing police work for other towns out there? Do you, approximately?
Well, Camden is an isolated incident where the state stepped in and created a new Metro Police Department. If you're asking me how many other towns are sharing contracted services, I wouldn't be able to tell you that like off the top of my head. I probably could research it for you.
I just let you might
No,
have it in
no.
general.
I know that there's been other smaller towns. I don't know if it's Steele, if it's Hazlitt, if it's, other towns like that that they're contracting for these services. It's not unusual. I know there's other things called shared services that some municipalities enter into. But in my professional opinion, I think we're going to see more of this going on, dissolutions of departments. I mean, we're having it right now. For those of you who are watching the news, Atlantic City, $101 million deficit, and the contracts. We had a accounting firm come in there, and his contracts are unsustainable, and we're not going to be able to sustain the police and fire department, which makes up 69% of the budget, with the existing contracts that are in place. And quite frankly, when you try and approach the union representatives about the contracts, you get taken advantage of, and nobody wants to give up. I mean, to give you a perfect example, the police department asked for 2% raises for the next 3 years in Atlantic City. I mean, not understanding the fiscal crisis that's going on in the city, how could you even go in and ask for a 2% raise, knowing there's a $101 million deficit that the state might have to stop in? All of us in this room have to pick up the bill.
And then the other question, I believe you came up with, the police department should be 2.4 officers, I think that's the number. Could they, if this did not go through, could they just lay off 2 or 3 officers and work with less than the 10? And I can't picture that working because this is not a 5-day-a-week job. This is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you do need
24/7.
And if they were to do that, would the state step in and send state troopers in to help cover, or would the county step in and help cover?
I can tell you that from my personal experience, when we were in Camden, state police didn't come in.
Okay.
Will they come in? I don't know. Depending on what the emergency is. I'm a nuts and bolts guy at the bottom. I don't know what, it's way above my pay grade with regard to incidents of that sort. Can they work with less? I don't know. That would be up to the governing body and the police chief there to say what's safe and what's not safe. I think what we provided you today is a safe rendition of how both Belmar and Lake Como can live happily ever after and work in an environment that's pro public safety and has a fiscal responsibility to both
to join me in a minute. I wanted just to take a quick second to thank Rick and Christine for coming out and giving the presentation. I wanted to explain why it's happening now. As was referenced, Lake Como is moving towards public referendum. The referendum is scheduled for April 20th, I believe. And that's when their voters will have an opportunity to decide if this is something that they want to pursue, either the tax increase to support the department or not to support the tax increase, which would essentially lead the council likely to ask to contract with Belmar. I asked Chief Pomzano, Drew Heisman, and members of the Belmar Police Department to inform us as to how they would handle that if it got to the contracting phase. And so we wanted to bring in the state to give you kind of the higher level picture, but what's about to happen next is really much more personal to us because it's Belmar, it's us. I don't think I need to convince anyone that we have an amazing police force. The fact that we're able to deal with a town that has quite the split personality. What we are in the wintertime is much different than what we look like in the summertime. And we have a police department that is efficiently run, delivers phenomenal service in both of those aspects. And so what was most important to us was to understand how our police department would tackle this expansion, which is essentially what it would be. So I want to just really quickly, because Rick threw out a lot of numbers for everybody, when we think of this in terms of nuts and bolts, Lake Como is approximately 25% the size of Belmar in size, population, okay? When we took a look at our force and what we think we need in order to properly police Lake Como, and when I say properly police, I mean police them as we police ourselves. That was really the standard that I heard from our police department. That we would grow about 25% as well. So I'm going to ask Captain Heisman to come up and walk you through what this schedule looks like. When I say schedule, this is not a calendar schedule. It's essentially a schedule that would be an addendum to a contract. So we're going to discuss it tonight. This information will go down the street to Lake Como, to their council. We'll share it with them after this meeting. Both Rick's presentation and Drew's presentation will be put on the website tomorrow morning so that everybody has access to it and everybody can see it. And again, this is kind of a preempted briefing because until Lake Como votes, this is really a conversation. Right. Captain, would you like to join us? You're welcome.
Council, that was a pretty interesting presentation. I can't say I'm an expert in the state, but I would consider myself an expert in policing in Belmar. I've been here for 23 years. I'm not going to stand here and discuss the problems in Lake Como and discuss the presentation that was just given. What I will discuss is how we would police Lake Como and what I think and my staff think we need. After reviewing with my staff over a period of months, we feel that we would need a minimum of 25 police officers. That would give a minimum manpower of 3 per squad and an additional detective. That would give us the same policing that we feel that we give the Belmar residents to Lake Como. The force itself, which is 20, would go up to 25, with 5 detectives from 4, and 3 man per squad year round. In the summer months, of course, would be additional personnel during weekends and major holidays, and the additional SLEOs that would help police Lake Como as well as Belmar. The community policing programs, the investigations, would all be considered the same as we do Belmar and Lake Como. I know Belmar. I think Lake Como is similar to Belmar, but every town is different. Every town has a different problem. Every town has quality of life issues. Belmar and Lake Como are similar, but at the same time, it will be different. That's my feeling on the policing. I think we could do it if we had the proper staffing and the police equipment to do it. And my thought and my staff's thought would be 25 people.
Is there not so much a learning curve, but a difficult transition, or taking over or manning their area? I know you said they're similar, but they're different. You don't see that it's
Well, they have
test
additional,
that can't be,
well, they have additional liquor license, they have additional bars, similar to Belmar. Each area of Lake Como would be handled differently. Bar A, Main Street, 18th Avenue, similar to how we patrol Belmar, we've been patrolling Lake Como. In zones, during summer months, additional walking patrols, bicycle patrols, and park patrols.
And they don't have any of that kind of thing now.
I know they have SLEOs and they have POs. I don't know exactly.
Would our officers need any additional training because they know our streets and they know our residents? Would they need anything in
Well,
addition to today, to work down there?
In addition to the police officers and the equipment, most of our police officers know the streets. There would be training during if the council were to go into contract with Lake Como, there would certainly be training along those lines. Any other questions?
I guess it gets down to nuts and bolts, and you have to wait to see what they want to do. I actually think that the 25 number sounds, it kind of jives with what we just heard from the state. I mean, they're talking about 4 officers and a detective. That sounds right too. Let's have to wait to see what they decide they want to do. I mean, you feel confident that we can do it, right?
For my training experience in Belmar,
Yeah.
I feel the additional manpower and the equipment, we could police Belmar with the same standards, we can police Lake Como with the same standards as Belmar.
That's all I need to know.
you said April 20th?
April 20th is the referendum. So after the results of that referendum, Lake Como would make a request of Belmar, and that's when we would be back to you if they decide to pursue a contract.
That's why I was curious, was the soonest or what kind of time frame? Either way, depending on how the referendum goes.
I think we really need to get through the referendum.
Yeah, they would have to tell us what the situation is.
False Senator Ford.
One quick question. Right now, we usually have 2 people on the road at a time.
Our year-round minimum manpower requirements are 2 people on the road. In the summer months, that changes during the weekends and main holidays.
Right. But normally, let's say this time of year today,
Minimum manpower requirements are 2 patrol officers.
and how many would we have on if this were to go into effect?
My recommendation would be minimum manpower of 3.
That makes sense.
And those 3 would be, one would not just be assigned to stay in Lake Como, he would be driving throughout 2 towns.
I would not consider that a zoned area. In the combination of Belmar and Lake Como, they would be, the town itself, both towns would be patrolled during the year-round months. Now, certainly in the summer months, we have zones and we have certain assignments,
Right.
but year-round would be minimum manpower requirement of 3.
So that would actually help the residents of Belmar also. You would have 1 more patrolman on the street in the wintertime than we do right now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any need to increase the number for dispatch? It's not like calls for flooding in, but just to save staffing and all that.
We dispatch for Lake Como currently.
We actually provide in this updated schedule that will be going down to Lake Como, what we're recommending is that the current dispatch agreement will be dissolved, and dispatching would just fold up under this new contract if they choose to pursue it. But considering, as the captain pointed out, we already dispatch for them, we're familiar with that level, and it wouldn't be an additional stressor.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you, Tom.
Next workshop discussion, we're going to have Mary Pep come up to discuss 5th and Main Street redevelopment.
Okay. We'll get this down to where we can actually hear you.
I understand this is just a presentation, nobody's gonna be voting for it.
And Mr. Northgrave is our redevelopment attorney who actually represents us on these matters. So if at any such time it comes back for further approvals, we'll talk about those. Thank you. Yes, so if you could introduce yourself to the council.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Coastal Bradshaw, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicants, Barry DePess and Sunny Loran of I2 Ventures. They are to my right, and an entity which will be determined as we hopefully go further through this process. We're here tonight just to give you a general overview in terms of a project that is in its beginning stages and to get some feedback from all of you. The redevelopment project regards the Torch Gallery property at 500 Main Street, which is located in the Belmar Seaport Village redevelopment area. The project is designed as a 3-story mixed-use project with 7 retail spaces on the first floor and 26 market units containing 1 and 2 bedrooms on the 2 upper floors, in addition to 2 affordable units. So it would be a total of 28 units. This proposed use is consistent and actually set forth in the Brighton Village redevelopment ordinance. The parking meets RSIS criteria. We're here tonight, as I indicated, basically just to get some preliminary feedback from all of you, and hopefully be able to move forward, to be designated as the redeveloper for the project, to address the financial agreement, the redevelopers agreement, and to start moving forward and getting into the specifics, and then hopefully going before the planning board. Tonight, we also have with us Rich DeFalco of JKR Engineering, who will also provide some presentation, I don't want to say testimony, but we'll give you an overview as well. And with that, I would like to turn it over to a little bit more substantive overview to Mr. DeFalco.
Good evening. She'll work.
Oh, I'm coming. No.
I'll hear about that forever.
So we've been before mayor and council in the past for 3 other redevelopment projects that we've completed already in town. 701 Main Street is Seaport Ventures, completed about 7.5 years ago. Then we came in and did Seacoast Commons, 800 Main Street, that was completed a little over 4 years ago. And the most recent redevelopment project we finished was Riverwalk, the old Havens and Hamptons property at the corner of 5th and Main, which happens to be across the street from this location. What we're proposing is very similar, just to give you a visual, not necessarily architecturally, but in scale, in site plan, and very similar to what we did at 800 Main Street. 800 Main Street was 200 foot of frontage on Main Street. This is 150 foot of frontage. It goes from, this property goes from corner of 5th Avenue up to the Acropolis Iron property, which is half of the city block. 26 market rate units versus the 30 market rate units that we have at Seacoast Commons. 7 retail spaces proposed here versus the 9 that we have at Seacoast Commons. Very similar in look. Even the diagonal parking that we're proposing on 5th Avenue, very similar to what we created at 8th Avenue successfully. We're here to just get some feedback. As Jennifer suggested or advised you, this property is actually designated as a parcel to be redeveloped in your Seaport redevelopment zone, specifically identified. We adhere to all, in concept right now, all of our site plan architectural plans adhere to all of your redevelopment ordinance requirements. Just looking for some feedback, and we'd love to come back to you guys in April if we could to a full public hearing to request designation and grant us permission to proceed with a full site plan application to your planning. But we're here to answer questions more than anything else now.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions with regards to parking. The shaded, the 11, 12, 16, that is strictly for the residents, for the tenants?
We will have
Or is that also
Just
for the
park in the
retail?
Parking in the back, yeah.
That's going to be just for the renters or the owners, is that correct? Or is that also for customers?
So we have, correct me if I'm wrong, 42 on-site parking spaces right now. And we have 26 market rate units and 2 affordable apartment units also. So 28 residential units is what we have proposed. So 42 parking spaces. We'll designate, similar to what we do at 800 Main Street. Every tenant would get one designated spot. So we would take 28 of those 42 spaces. There'd be 14 additional spaces for guest parking, some retail use, and that's just on-site. You still have,
For retail, the retailers who are occupying the spaces on the first floor, that parking would be available to them if it was available.
correct, yeah. We would number 1 through 28, and each tenant would have one designated space. Everything would be overflow parking on that, including the on-street parking.
Okay. The on-street parking right there, I would assume that's a net increase over what's there now. You know
It's
how
a
much space
100% improvement from what's there right now. I witnessed it again. Strollers is open, by the way.
It is,
Yeah, so-
kids went last night.
And as I was parked at the traffic light, I saw one car trying to do a crazy K-turn coming back out. So, well, we believe similar to what we've proven at 8th Avenue. You know, it's a very controlled situation now. But right now, that situation where they're pulling in on the side of the strollers and K-turning back out into oncoming traffic, this starts to control that traffic pattern much better.
It's going to have them all angled in.
Exactly. So when they have to back out, they have to go east on 5th. You'll see on our plan that we show a potential for a future drive or access road that actually connects 5th to 6th to lighten the burden on 5th Avenue.
On the opposite side, on your Riverwalk side, it's just going to be end-to-end, right? The parking? The way it's now, it's just going to be the curb line.
Yep.
Parallel.
Okay, you know, I'm a huge fan of mixed use, and I really like the other developments you've done. But I gotta tell you, I looked at that drawing, and I'm not liking the way that building looks. My thing, partly is because of the size of the building across the street we put up. I'm not a big fan of straight up from the sidewalk. I need to see more light. I need to see, part of the problem when you're building really high walls along the main street is you get the canyon effect, and there's less light, you know, in the morning and in the evening. And it takes what should be a small town feel and changes that. And I'm not a big fan of losing that. I'd like to see a design that's a little more broken up, you know. But I like what you did at 8th Avenue, but I could even see that a little more, just a little more variance in the roof line. And,
So a little bit of a change from a federal look, maybe, if that's what we're referring to as far as the starkness and the verticality of it, right?
Yeah.
Roof lines and more of a residential look to it, or not quite?
You
not
know
sure
what?
we're out there.
You know, I could just something that looks more like that. That's the main thing to me. My concern, like I just said, is that if we get really tall 3- and 4-story buildings all lining up on Main Street, we're just gonna stop looking like a small town. And what that will do is that'll create like a barrier between what happens on Main Street and the neighborhoods behind it.
Yeah.
And I don't wanna, you know, have that kind of disconnect.
Tough to do, right?
I don't.
Zoning's approved for 3 stories. We actually sat with a bunch of your professionals during Sea Coast Commons, the 800 Main Street, and created some language in your ordinance. That original ordinance was developed basically for Gale and what they wanted to develop. So we came up with these setback and step back concept, we're trying to, so it wasn't just the verticality on Main Street.
Is that any of that incorporated in that?
You know, you're looking at a flat picture right now.
Do you have a side elevation, Barry?
I have a
Is
side,
there
but I think you really need you'll need a 3D perspective.
Yeah.
What's happening on that, we're doing a radius
Yeah, I can see it.
on the corner that you don't really pick up. This is not square,
No.
it's all rounded around the corner. But probably need a 3D perspective better to illustrate what's happening there. But that's why we're here. We wanted to get some feedback before we come back to you. Again, that process happens through the planning board and your architectural review process also. Again, we're not asking for anything tonight other than if you want to see us move forward, we'd like to come back in April just to say, grant us the opportunity to come before you.
Just my couple thoughts with Riverwalk, because I pass it every day, and, you know, coming over the bridge, it's absolutely spectacular, it's beautiful, and it looks like it's overwhelmingly big, but I find even next to it, coming up soon, that it's very welcoming. I think you've got the different shades, I don't want to get too particular, but you've got a lot of cuttings, you've got a lot of shades, you've got a lot of textures to it, so it is not, it might be deceiving, because it's not this, you've got the balconies, etc. So, and I kind of recall back in Riverwalk, looking at the plan, it just looked like,
Right.
so I remember feeling that way, like, oh my goodness, it's this.
What you're talking about is kind of exciting. I sat on your advisory board last year, and some of these conversations came up with a bunch of the folks that are on the committee. And I fully agree. You know, we talked about our Main Street and different areas along Main Street, right? Where's our downtown commercial district? What's happening down at the riverfront and Seaport? What I'm hearing from you is, you know, it's more of a residential feel. You want, you know, we're going to still be 3 stories. It's still going to be a mixed use commercial piece, but at that end of town, maybe it becomes a little softer. I guess is the term, right?
Yeah,
It's just a little softer, right? We have the core downtown, which can be more of that federal look, and we have Beach House Breweries, the Raymond's is that structure.
I do think softer, not just that, but you've got Riverwalk, which has that feel, and then you've got the bridge that you're heading towards.
Short of, not mimic, we don't want to mimic the same architecture.
Yeah.
So,
Right, let me ask like a really quick question. I know you probably can't answer this now, but Strolls can stay?
Strolls, yeah, we actually have in the footprint, 980 square foot reserved for them if they want to come back. There's going to be some issues as far as during construction, what happens,
Yeah, right.
right? You know, our timeline is we hope to be able to move to your plant, or you folks maybe in April, and then start planning board in May and June. The thought is that we probably put most of the outside agency approvals together for later this fall, and we've committed to Strolls that they have to be able to operate all this summer.
Yeah, right.
But once construction starts, there's going to be one summer season, right? So I don't know what happens in that situation.
And it goes back to that.
I'm not going to vote for a food truck. That was a little rich. That was expensive.
I've got a couple questions. You said 26, 1 and 2 bedroom, and then you said 2 affordable
Correct.
units. What do you constitute affordable unit as opposed to a 1 bedroom?
The affordable unit is a 1-bedroom unit. It's not efficiency. It's a 1-bedroom unit, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, similar to what we built over. So we have 4 affordable units over at Seacoast Commons. Believe it or not, affordability is defined by the state of New Jersey and Monmouth County for a 1-bedroom is $1,200 a month. We started at Seacoast Common at $960 a month for those units. I think we have 2 out of the 3 residents that still pay that same number. It's about 875 square foot for a 1-bedroom affordable unit, which is about 125 square feet larger than the minimum in the state. 750 is the state's number. So we're about 875, so it's a nice size unit.
And my only problem with the whole thing, if you've noticed, in Belmar, we have a parking problem in the summertime. With the condos in town, and they all allow 1 parking space per condo, and let's face it, every family owns 2 cars. Is there any way we can come up with more than 28 parking spaces for the residents?
What's our total count there, Rich? We're gonna have 58 total, so 40, we're providing 42 on site, and then we're actually creating, 16, we're creating 12 additional along Fifth Avenue, so that's a 58 total. Our history with the 2 properties that we currently rent at Seaport and Seacoast, about close to 40% of the residents are singles. Yeah, almost 40%.
Well, there's two in our house and we have 4 cars.
Yeah.
That's Lawrence places, they want to be able to, you know.
But to address that more specifically to this corner though, even with this development and the increased intensity with the residents and the retail, we're significantly increasing the parking in that section of town.
Good, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to petitions. Are there any petitions to present to council? Walter?
Tom Volker, 527 8th Avenue, also a member of the Belmar Business Partnership. And we are presenting this petition from the Belmar Business Partnership. Whereas the Borough of Belmar faces strong demand for its limited supply of on-street and off-street parking, and whereas the demand for parking is expected to increase with continued growth and development of the central business district, and whereas growth and development accordingly, the demand for parking will accelerate with the proposed expansion of the redevelopment zones. And whereas if unmitigated, Belmar could face parking shortages, resulting in environmental safety, traffic issues, with negative impacts on Belmar businesses, institutions, residents, and visitors, and resulting in law enforcement actions at added cost to Belmar taxpayers. And whereas parking management is a function that New Jersey municipalities are permitted to undertake by law, and whereas the Borough of Belmar has created the Belmar Parking Utility as per Ordinance 2005-05, and has enacted other ordinances relating to parking, among them Ordinance 2011-27, we, the undersigned, ask that the Borough of Belmar immediately begin to take all necessary steps to address short, medium, and long-term parking needs as per the Belmar Business Partnership parking recommendations as attached in consultation with business institutions and the residents of the Borough of Belmar and with all other applicable stakeholders. Respectfully, the Belmar Business Partnership Board of Trustees, Sale Marquisi, President, Marty Riccio, Vice President, Norman Einhorn, Secretary, Gail O'Reilly, Treasurer, Tom Burke, Brian Hatton, Brendan Reed, Dirk Reitzman, Kate Walters, Tom Volker, and John Secretary, board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any other petitions this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll move to the approval of minutes.
I move that the minutes on the meetings held on March 1st, 2016 be approved as recorded, and that a copy thereof be posted on the borough's website.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to reports of council.
Tomorrow is the senior luncheon in the gym at 11 a.m. And if you are older than 50 or 55, come join us. Walking is almost over in the gym. It's still on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 until 2 in the afternoon. And come and join us for that and get a little exercise while it's still a little too chilly to go out on the boardwalk. And that's everything I have.
Council,
Thank you, Council.
Tommy, Councilman Brennan.
Thank you, Councilman. You know, the only thing I want to report about is I've been lucky enough, I'm working with Mrs. White and Mrs. Stearman over at Belmar Elementary School. The Belmar Drama Club is going to put on their annual production. It's going to be Friday evening at 7, and then Saturday's the matinee at 2. They're presenting Fame Junior. I got to tell you, these teachers have done a great job with these kids. It's really amazing. And not for nothing, I've been working with them for about 3 weeks. I do the sound for them. I put the microphones on the kids and I run the music. And even 3 weeks ago, it was really looking. I mean, you could see some flashes, and they just really started coming together. And I'm telling you, the show's going to be great. And there's a young woman named Nicolay who's going to so good, and another young woman named Dory who's really quite outstanding. There are going to be some moms that are going to be crying, I'm telling you. I'm so proud. So if you're around, please come over and see Fame Junior. And that's the end of it.
I just want to quickly report, please attend the show. They've been working extremely hard, and thank you to Councilman Brennan for being part of that. My daughter had said that they're all dressing up in 80s costumes and said, what do they dress like in the 80s? I'm like, wait, let me get my bags. So I have all my stuff. Also that the Belmar Summer Camp, registration began tonight and tomorrow night and then next week, and I'm sure it's going to fill up very quickly. So we're excited to have that program again. So, and that's it for reports of council.
Who's the mayor and Mr. Governor? Oh, yeah.
The two guys that usually sit here, I forget their names. Mayor Doherty and Council President McGovern are at the White House this evening. So they are there for a reception for St. Patrick's Day.
The President's celebration for St.
Yeah, President's celebration for St. Patrick's Day. And Brian McGovern has said that he is going to show Barack Obama how to shoot a foul shot. So I thought that was
Civil Service. I love that.
yeah. Okay, so I'm sure they're having a great time. On to public session. Anyone having comment on the meeting agenda only, please? There will be an opportunity for the meeting for open public comment. Wait to be called on to come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll have a motion to adopt.
Oh, yeah.
Motion to close the public session.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda, can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second.
Councilman Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
Councilman Nicholas?
Yes. Okay. Ordinances. I move to open public hearing on ordinance 2016-04, amending and supplementing chapters 20 licenses, general, and 26 housing and property of maintenance of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Belmar and the County of Monmouth, New Jersey. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
I'm going to ask people to be called on, then come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
This is the public comment on the ordinance 2016-04, commonly known as the Wildwood Ordinance.
Good evening, I'm Melanie Hunt, I'm 222 15th Avenue. I'm here tonight, unfortunately, my husband can't be here while he's traveling, in support of the ordinance, and I know at least one, if not multiple, of the neighbors have sent in a notarized letter already to the council, the mayor and council. I wanted to touch base just about what an impact issue this is for us. There are certain sections of town that don't have to deal with this, which I think is phenomenal, so you actually get to enjoy your life in your home. We are specifically combating the issue of chronic animal house offenders. These are people that we have spoken to when they, once a year, come to visit their property, and we say to them, listen, this is going on. These are pretty uncomfortable circumstances for the rest of the surrounding neighborhood. I don't bring children to my home on weekends because I'm afraid of what they're going to hear, the language, the urination, the everything, the whole package of what that entails. And they literally have said to us in the past, you know, you shouldn't have to live that way, call the police. I don't really think that's the responsibility of the neighbors to police their properties. And so one of the things that by the way, I very much thank the Belmar Police Department and code enforcement for responding every time one of our neighbors has called, very professional manner, so thank you to all of you guys for what you do. But in speaking with them, the other disturbing comment that they had made was, I've always been an animal house. Since the day I got the property, I'm an animal house now, I'll always be an animal house. I'm at Max Bond, I'm an animal house. They have no intention of changing, and so we wanted to make sure we supported this ordinance because it now gives the police, the code enforcement, something else to draw upon for the folks who truly don't care about their properties, who are absentee landlords and wind up on the animal house list year after year after year. We look at them, they're typically the same properties year after year. So I just wanted to support that and also explain to people who may not live in those sections of town where you have an animal house near you, that this is still ongoing for us. So I thank Belmar for all the efforts they've made in the years past to reduce this, because I think it has made a big difference for the community as a whole. And I'm looking forward to that next step for those people who don't want to be accountable to take care of their properties. So thank you very much.
I just want to be clear, the conversation you're having, it isn't with the tenants, it's with the owner.
Correct. We spoke with the owner directly.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Christine Carlino, 510 15th Avenue. I appreciate and support the intent of the proposed changes to control animal house rentals, but requiring responsible, law-abiding landlords like myself who does weekly rentals to nice families that, you know, bring tourism dollars to our town, I think requiring landlords like me to obtain a mercantile license is not the best remedy to alleviate the animal house problem in Belmar. I think requiring mercantile licenses will only open a can of worms regarding zoning and other issues relating to commercial properties that could have other ramifications that you may not have considered when drafting this ordinance. My big concern is that you're going to be making our property a commercial, we're not public accommodations, it's a private home that I choose to rent on a short-term basis, like some landlords choose to rent year-round. I just have different rental terms. The people who rent my house don't make noise and disturb the neighborhood, so I think it would be an added burden to have to get a mercantile license in that instance for weekly rentals. I rent to couples and families and none of the crazy kids. So I just don't know that the mercantile license part of that ordinance is the right approach to solve the problem. I don't know why you can't just not give these animal house landlords just deny their summer rental license and say no to that without requiring the mercantile license. And if there has to be other solutions than the mercantile license, because you'll hurt other people. There are other landlords in town that don't violate the laws, and you'll hurt us with that mercantile requirement.
How would that, you're saying it would hurt and there'd be problems? Because I know there aren't any tax ramifications.
Yeah.
What would?
Well, are you trying to commercialize the short-term rental business in town?
No, it's just having another avenue in case there are problems, how to resolve them.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering how you see the.
Well, if you're trying to, because it said in the newspaper that, these are essentially businesses that people are running. Well, if you're going to call us a business, are we going to have to register with the state as a business? And, are we going to have commercial insurance and things like that? If you're treating us like a business, when it's a private residence that we're renting, just like a year-round person, year-round tenant?
Councilwoman, if I may, the ordinances right now require seasonal rentals to have mercantile licenses. This ordinance doesn't create any further obligation to have a mercantile license. What it does is put in place a mechanism to revoke a mercantile license, therefore not being able to operate on a seasonal or a temporary basis. However, you would be able to rent your property on a year-round basis. So I don't know what the town is actually doing now as to requiring the mercantile licenses, but this property, in my opinion, just from the facts that I've heard, would require a mercantile license right now. And if you run your property in a non-animal house manner, I think the only thing the mercantile license does, or only imposition that it provides, is the fee. I don't know what the fee is, but it's not exorbitant, so that's the only thing.
$40. Sorry.
$40. So only thing it does really, you should have a mercantile license now.
Well, I always get the summer rental license. I always get whatever you're supposed to get.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a different thing as well, and this also amends that as well. So the ordinance, the genesis of the ordinance is called a Wildwood ordinance because Wildwood put this in place. So what it does is it would prevent historically or an operation of a property that's historically in animal house mode. It would take its mercantile license away, so it wouldn't be able to seasonal or temporary rent. You, of course, would be able to go on your way. You don't have any animal house issues, so it really wouldn't affect you other than, whatever fees required.
Well, as long as that's fine. then that's
Yeah.
okay. I was just worried that you're gonna, open the whole can of worms and.
Literally nothing's gonna change except how money is sort of violations. They just can't get your license.
And that, I support that, and actually, the people behind me 2 summers ago, I think they rented illegally, and they had the kids outside all day, and I was calling the police all the time, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Vicky Runner, 1160 Street, Belmar. I had no intention, I came here for something else, but now that they're bringing this up, we're sitting in the back. We did all this over 20 years ago on animal house stuff. All in place, community policing, had all these ordinances drawn up, and I thought the way it was supposed to work is if you got a ticket for noise, and got the second ticket, or you became an animal house, like somebody said they've been animal houses to this woman their whole time. If you became an animal house, the police had a register of houses that were designated animal houses. You had to put up a bond, is that correct?
Right.
And you went to court, the whole thing. After that, supposedly, if you were a designated animal house, and you rented the following year, and you were still an animal house the second time around, the second year after you became one, there were consequences. And the consequences were supposed to be basically what you just said, that if you did rent, and you became a nuisance the first ticket or the second ticket, by the second or first ticket, I don't even know which one it was, it's been a while, you were supposed to be evicted out of that house, so that you were not a nuisance to your neighbors. And therefore, the landlord got his money for the rent, but the kids lost. And once that got out, that they lost their house, even though they paid the money, they were supposed to change the behavior. So I'm confused. I get very confused when I come to these things. I'm too old now to see that this thing has gone in a circle and comes back around, it keeps coming back around. It's like reinventing the wheel every time we discuss something. We have to get it right. It costs money to change all these ordinances each time we do it. And the way, in fact, your way, you can check with her, because I have brought this up numerous times. The way community policing was supposed to work, we have 20 streets, we had 20 officers. Each officer was supposed to know everybody that knew on the street. You had an idea who was living there, who was moving in, who was moving out. And we were supposed to get a combination of housing to work with the police department and have issues when you go to rent something. If I go to rent a house and I have a tenant that lives there, they know that on June 1st, it's a register, you know that on June 1st, this person moved in. And your wife brought up to update, every 2 years, you're supposed to come back and pay the fee. So if I miss somebody when I bought a house 20 years ago, they came with the house. When I bought the house and they lived there, she left 20 years later, she was there forever. But every 2 years, as a landlord, I was supposed to go get the house re-inspected with the CO. So if your COs are updated and in a database, and it comes up who lives on the street, and the police know who lives in these apartments and houses and whatever, it brings the whole community. That was the whole purpose of this a long time ago. And then if you have an animal house, which some people are still experiencing, and they show up on a database and designated, they're flagged. So they know the police, that helps them know these houses are marked. They know where to patrol more. If there's nothing on 5th Avenue, and there's 10 of them on 15th, they know to work to combat that area to fix it. There's simple ways to fix these problems, and 20 years later, we should be really wrapping it up. So I don't know what the ordinance is that they're changing, I don't know the specifics because I haven't paid attention, but hopefully you get all the different departments to work together in a database, which is the original plan for housing, policing, court cases, the whole thing. That's how it should work altogether. Thank you.
Well, the animal house ordinances were geared towards the landlords, that's the point. Noise violations would be issued to the tenants, but the whole concept of animal house was to bring the landlords to feel the pain. And this will, in a situation where somebody says, I'm an animal house and that's the cost of doing business, that's fine. Well, this will take away his mercantile license, so you can't do that. So he can't be an animal house. He can rent property, but has to be year-round. So you can't do the seasonal. An eviction, I believe the landlords, I'm going to talk off the top of my head here, so I'm going to go different. They say, oh, you guys know what I'm talking about. But the landlord is the one who brings the eviction proceeding to avoid the animal house penalties, if that's the way they choose to go. But the town itself can go and void a contract between a landlord and a tenant, between two private parties. We can't do that.
We could just slap one of the parties with a really high bond. The idea was-
Well, that's the idea, and the bond goes on, and they don't mind. So
Right.
it's not a problem, because if, whatever you can charge in rent covers your bond, you don't really care. Cost of doing business, and everybody's different. Every landlord's different. I'm not saying everybody operates this way, but that's the way some of these houses that are problems operate, and this is designed to actually do what this renter was just talking about, to actually put an end to it.
And if I could offer just real quick, because Mrs. Renner spoke to it, a lot of what she is suggesting really is, you run into issues with constraints at the state level. The animal house ordinances are governed by state statute. We point to them, and we govern them, and we enforce them to their maximum. But the maximum bond right now, the state allows is $5,000. You cannot levy more than that. And so the reason why this ordinance came about and was introduced and discussed tonight was it's another tool in the toolbox. It's something else that gives the borough some assistance in piggybacking on that animal house state statute. So some of the limitations that are given to us by state, we're hoping to get a little bit more flexibility for something like this.
Any other public comment? Okay. Ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt ordinance number 2016-04. I'll make that motion.
And I'll second.
Councilwoman Field Blackburn?
Well, something's happened over the last, I'm 68, so when I was 20, things were a little bit different. We didn't use language that they use today as adjectives. Every other word, it seems like in some of these sentences that these 20-year-olds come up with, are words we never even thought of. So something's happened to our society over all these years. And it's happening everywhere, not just in our beach towns. Not all of the animal houses in Belmar are summer rentals. Some of the privately owned houses where they come down for the weekends in the summertime are just as bad. It's summertime, people are outside, voices carry. Agreed, the language these days is just absolutely awful, and I don't know how that happened. We do know that not all the summer rentals are animal houses. We do have a lot of rentals in town where the people are very, very nice, and families renting, and we're not trying to hurt any of those people or make any changes for them. But we do need an ability, I think, to pool a license and to not allow a particular house to be rented again. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this ordinance. It seems to me that most of these landlords are absentee landlords. They're not the people that live next door to their rental property. They live somewhere in North Jersey or Pennsylvania or New York or somewhere else. So they're not here. They're not experiencing what all of you as residents, all of us as residents are experiencing. And I would like to also encourage, if we pass this tonight, and even if we don't, I'd really like to encourage that our mayor and maybe someone from the police department and our housing department try to meet with every landlord pre-summer, before the summer season begins. Have a meeting, and if some of these landlords don't come, send a letter to any of the landlords stressing what our rules and regulations for this town are. But with all that said, I'm going to vote yes.
Councilman Brennan?
Yes.
Councilman Nicolai?
Yes.
That's all right. You said it without. Yeah.
All right, moving on to public session. It's now time for public session. Please raise your hand, wait to be called on, come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Each speaker will have 5 minutes and 1 turn at the mic.
It was brought to my attention, and it was in the newspaper, which I read, that Councilman McGovern has suggested that you look into changing the outdoor dining ordinance affecting the rear yard property. As I stated before, every time you change an ordinance, it costs money, every single time. So, when I read it, I guess I'm asking you, sitting up here, because he's not here tonight, if you can name any other property in town besides mine that this will affect. Anybody that has a restaurant, that has a rear piece of property, I can't think of one except me. So I called April, and she assured me that I don't have to worry, that even if you do change this ordinance, and you pay to have this ordinance changed, my property will not be affected. So I came here tonight to voice it in public, to make sure that this is so, because I've gone to the planning board, I've had the approvals, and the governor stated that now that this Total Promise has moved out, that now the place is empty, and it would be a great time to change the ordinance. Meaning that if I rent the property to someone else, I might have trouble, getting approval for outdoor dining or the people that move in. As I understand it, I've been around for a long time. I've been on the planning board for 20 years, and to me, that's spot zoning, and it's definitely discriminating just on me. So I don't get it, and that's why I'm here. What do I have here? Basically that you guys were gonna check it out, send it over to the planning board, have them discuss it and come back. Mr. McGovern stated that he's had numerous complaints. As to date, I have never been notified of any complaints of anything that went on there while Tulip Highlands was renting there, with the exception of Connie Del Cortes, who has taken me to court since the day I left the building for different lawsuits, and they just got a finalization of one last week. So for the last 4 years of my life and my husband, purchasing an old, decrepit building, him working there every single day, we're both tired of it, and to be harassed, obviously everybody knows Tulip Highlands went bankrupt. And part of the reason I think is because of the many lawsuits that were brought on to them, that was part of their demise. So it's a small town, and you know, we lost a tremendous amount of money because of the lawsuits and trying to help them at the beginning. And then it kind of has like a domino effect. Not only do they go bankrupt and hurt, you know, people like us who are in business, but everybody that they owed money to, and you know, you're talking $350,000 to $400,000, including the town was on there for things that they just got to walk away with going bankrupt. So when you change an ordinance and you allow building in this community with new things of, you know, changing ordinance so that you can have a beer distributing place in there. You can have 3 stories in the Seaport redevelopment zone, and you have places that are putting up beautiful buildings, you're building up the community, we're changing as a town. It doesn't look anything like it looks like when I moved here when I was 28 years old. And they're all very positive things in a different way. The town has grown, and I think the town looks good. I do think the town has gone forward with things. Is it too much? Is it too less? I don't know. Hurricane Sandy came in, washed away everything on the ocean, and I will tell you that for the first time, our Main Street thrived the last few years because people had to come to Main Street to shop and to eat. So your businesses, the people that open businesses in this town, you know, if you don't support them locally, if everybody doesn't support them, they leave. And you will have empty stores, which we had many years ago. This place was scary. It was looking very scary.
You have 1 minute, but quick question. Have there ever been any complaints that we're aware of with the outdoor dining in Highlands? Just curious.
Other than the lawsuits, I don't know any off the top of my head.
So one person had it out for us, and did a good job destroying other people. And I just want to be assured tonight that even if we decide to change this in some way, I would have to take action to protect myself. I have an investment in this community, a big investment. I'm used to doing residential things. This was our first and probably our only and last commercial building that we will attempt. God bless those people that came in and want to give you millions of dollars to invest in this community and make it better and take old crummy buildings and make them beautiful, because it takes a lot. And every board you have to go to, and every approval you have to get, and every single person that has an opinion, there's a zillion of them. So, I mean, it takes a lot to work with each other, and I think that's what you have to do. So I'm asking you to consider what this ordinance is that you're changing, and if it is going to affect me, I would like to be, you know, notified legally, because I think I'm the only one. I think it's spot zoning. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Katrina Classes, Bay Street. Actually, it's just a question. Can you give us an update on the Lake Como outflow pipe? Like where we're at in the process?
Please.
We just, Friday afternoon, got an executed grant agreement back from the state, which was a huge milestone. Our environmental file review is probably about 2 weeks off from completion. After that point, we'll be able to finalize the bid construction schedule, and we'll be first briefing council and then doing a neighborhood meeting. So it's moving forward.
Okay, great. And I know the debt statement came out in Belmar, and was the $6 million bond, I didn't see that on that. Or did I just misread it? You took a $6 million bond out, right? Correct, for the outflow pipe?
It was a bond notice that only required, I think it was $280,000 for the pipe because of the offset of the grant.
Okay, so we only had to borrow 280,000?
Don't quote me on that, I don't have
I
papers in
mean-
front of me. If you want to send me an email, I can get you exact numbers.
But it wasn't the entire 6 million?
No,
Okay, so you're saying it's like under 3, somewhere around?
please don't quote me. I do
Right.
not have any papers in front of me, and I
Okay.
don't want to misquote you.
Okay,
It was
great.
certainly not the $6.4 million project.
Okay, so that 300 or whatever it is showed up on the debt statement?
Oh, sure.
What would it have been under? Like what category would it have been under?
If you want to send me an email, I can definitely address
Okay,
it.
I will, thank you, thanks.
Tom Dilberry, 1000 River Road. A couple of things. I'll start with this last presentation here by the gentleman. Now, the bottom floor, as you saw on his easel there, is going to be stores, more stores. Now, if you look across the street, River Walk was brought up. Nothing along that, it has opened. It's been a couple of years now. Nothing is open on the ground floor. There's supposed to be at least one restaurant and whatever other shops are. If you look at the beer brewery, the ground floor, you got the rest shop just went down. And, the souvenir shop is going. But around in the back, facing the parking lot, nothing is open. None of that is done. None of those stores are done. More or less right now, the 3 stores, starting with the steakhouse and the next two establishments on Main and 10th. Main and 10th, that would be south on the east side, are closed. The bank is still closed. The project where the ice cream factory is stopped and everything. It's in a stop position right now. This is not the, and I also have a question. Is this affordable housing, this project that was mentioned this evening between 5th and 6th? Is it affordable housing?
You mentioned just 2 units. 2 units.
2 units, okay, 2 units. At how many?
28 total.
22. And also, once again, one thing I really despise is this diagonal parking. That's gonna be on 5th Avenue. Let's try not to do that. Just whatever cars we can get on a parallel park, put them there. Because that's a dangerous business no matter how you look at it, anywhere it is. But as far as the business is, it's not gonna go. We're not affording these businesses. They're not opening, and if they open, then they close shortly after. Nothing stays open for long. Maybe Chef's a National Grove at the marina, and 9th Avenue Pier, that's fine. Maybe Connolly Station will be fine. But they're eateries. We're talking about shops, and we don't have the infrastructure, the big population of people going through the 9 months or 8 months of the off-season. And everything. I think this is a mistake, if and when they come back and everything, to consider putting it up. I mean,
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
yeah.
No, I was
That's
just
all
gonna.
right, that's all right. I'm not quite done.
It's just, if I could just comment, the mayor and council doesn't approve that. That's ultimately a planning board matter,
Okay.
but this developer is developing according to the redevelopment plan, so there's not much, the redevelopment plan says, we want mixed use, and he says, I'm gonna put in mixed use, and he's complying with what the ordinance say, so, you may be right. I mean, ultimately, maybe, it's too much retail, but that's not the governing bodies or the planning board's call. It's the developers, and he's putting his capital along the line, and he thinks differently. So, that's where we're at with this plan.
Okay, thank you. Let me get away from this for now. About the presentation by the gentleman that came about the police force. Now, it was some good questions from the council. The one that stuck with me is what happened in Camden. Camden County took it over. I think he said he didn't know. Camden County took over Camden. That happened, that's who's policing it. And the state, of course, is paying Camden County to police Camden, the township of Camden, the city of Camden. That's how that works. I think there should be a delay in thinking on whether to pick it up. They're not thinking things through in Lake Como at this point. There are options. For instance, you can have a civilian patrol. You can. It's going to be done in Asbury. That's already in the mix. It's going to be done there, and it's done in other towns in Jersey, and done all over the city of New York. There's all sorts of civilian patrols in all sorts of neighborhoods. And everything. It can be done. There's a difference with all that blizzard of statistics. We have to concentrate. There's a difference of season and out of season policing. You don't need all that policing 12 months a year down here. You can do with less and everything. Maybe Lake Como could retain one police officer and just run him as a dispatcher to the civilian patrol. They're not thinking it through down there. Plus, it's a nasty little situation that they were so irresponsibly, financially, for the last however many years, to have X amount of police officers at that amount of money per. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. Dilbert.
Janet Rose Ambler, 701 Ocean Avenue. I want to congratulate the mayor, the council, police, DPW, and the parade committee for putting on an absolutely wonderful St. Patrick's Day parade. It was a great sunny day, a lot of smiling faces on Main Street. Locals and visitors enjoyed themselves, so many businesses were open, and this is the Belmar that we know and love. One of my friends lives in Spring Lake, but she comes to Belmar all the time because we have so many great community events. And it's this positive attitude and atmosphere that comes from all of you guys, the Belmar business owners, all the workers who make this town as great as it is. Belmar is respected from around the state for our leadership and this absolutely great community we have. Some people might not know, but we had 4 potential governor candidates come to walk in our parade. Sweeney, Fulop, Wisniewski, and Murphy. And they wouldn't come here if Belmar wasn't an important place to be. So thank you again, Mayor and Council, for leading our town in such a positive, strong, community-oriented way.
That was a fun day, I have to say. And I missed the snow a little bit, but not really. So. Anyone else?
Just real quick, we have a really bad speeding problem.
You can just state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine Carlino, 15th Avenue. We have a really bad speeding problem on 15th Avenue between D and E, especially in the summer when it's one way of people leaving the beach. Last year I have been emailing the town about your speed is, digital signage, or speed bumps or something to control it a little better. So I just wanted to bring it up again in advance of the summer season to get it on the radar. Speeding is a year-round problem, but it's really bad in the summer on my block. And especially renting to the families with small children. God forbid one of their kids runs in the street, and something happens. So I just wanted to put it on the radar if we could look into better patrolling of speeders or the digital signage or speed bumps or something would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Tornio. I'm the PBA delegate of Local 50, which represents Belmar and Lake Como. First thing, please don't take this as an attack at all. My issue is with the presentation that was done here today. I don't know why he didn't stick around for questions. I've never seen anybody pack up and run so quickly. But I definitely have some issues with his presentation. Mainly, it was full of lies. The numbers were just not correct. I just want to point out a couple of things that he said that I definitely have a problem with. one of which is the Camden County that he is very proud of being a part of. That is not working out well for anybody down in Camden County. That's a fact. Just a couple of things. They had 411 officers beforehand. Now they're in the mid-300s, and that's where they roughly are. The pay is so drastically low, they have one of the highest attrition rates in the country. Okay? People are leaving there, they get hired there, and then they leave. Okay? And that's not what you want with a police department. On top of that, if you Google, which I did as sitting here, most dangerous cities in America, the first link that comes up I click on, 2016, Camden is number 2. That's 2016. So for him to be proud of his work is ridiculous. Second, this is a man who said he was a municipal police officer for over 25 years. And I apologize, again, I'm not attacking you. I would have said this to him if he was here. This is a man that was a police officer for over 25 years, who worked under a collective bargaining agreement, who got the perks of personal days, holiday pay, days off, a schedule, and now he's living on a pension check that he collects once a month. And he has the nerve to put up the details of Lake Como's contract and tear it apart. He's a hypocrite. That's what he is. Okay? He got the benefits, and now his second job is attacking the people that are collecting the same benefits that he once had. And what infuriated me more than anything was his comments on Atlantic City. He could not be more of a liar. I just sat through a presentation a week ago where the mayor of Atlantic City and the Speaker of the House both praised the Atlantic City unions for their concessions, their givebacks, and their willingness to work to save the municipality of Atlantic City. Them asking for 2% raises for 3 years is a bold-faced lie. On top of the 3 things I just gave you, the numbers he presented, the 30 minutes to take a bicycle theft report, I'm a police officer. That is absurd. Okay? I could do a presentation right now and make up numbers and make up formulas in my head that he was doing. They're lies. And if a guy is going to come here as a supposed expert and give a presentation like he did, he should have to stick around and answer questions. And he didn't do that today. But these people, if they had to sit through and listen to it, should know the truth. If I had a half an hour, I could tear that presentation apart. It was nonsense. And I hope the people in this room, including you, are smart enough to read through it. Now, this is not a Belmar problem, this is a Lake Como problem. But you brought him in here to do a presentation, he should have had to stick around to answer at least some questions. Because I guarantee you, if the roles were reversed, he could have came up with other formulas and another presentation to show that the Belmar Police Department doesn't need to be here and Lake Como should take him over. That's what he does. That's his job. And this was a police officer collecting a pension. Okay? And that's all I want to say. Again, I'm not attacking you. It was my issue was with Mr. Richardello. He's a liar. And I would have said that if he was standing here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we should have been able to ask any questions. I think questions.
Joy Desing, just 101 6th Avenue. I just really wanted to say that I'm extremely pro-law enforcement. Sorry, Tom. I feel that whatever salaries were negotiated through the PBA delegate and the persons within authority to do so at the time were negotiated. They're contractually bound by these decisions that they made. This is a Lake Como problem. We really have enough problems in Belmar. I don't want to see any of those police officers lose their jobs, and maybe Lake Como could be a little bit more creative with non-essential employees, terminating them or cutting them back, or there's always ways to cut a budget, but in my world, it would never be cutting law enforcement. I wanted to say that, and I also wanted to say that I agree that the presentation was all skewed as far as the numbers, while he was very articulate in announcing that Lake Como did not cooperate and only gave 9 months worth of numbers for service calls. He never factored whether those were the missing months were the summer months, or why they didn't give a full year's time of numbers. So we were really working with incorrect numbers for whatever reason Lake Como had, if they did indeed not provide the full 12 months. And finally, I want to say that I have never heard any former police officer, and I am one, diminish the jobs of law enforcement as much as this individual did. It doesn't matter if you're responding to a call of a stolen bicycle or a assault in progress. You always put your life on the line as a police officer, and you are the first responder. And I just felt the way he presented it. I understand he was trying to do it statistically and break it out into thirds, but it's never that cut and dry in law enforcement. It just never is. And I felt that he did a disservice to himself and to all other law enforcement personnel by the presentation that he gave.
David Schnapp, 302 C Street. I would just like to make the observation that the whole presentation, and maybe I missed something, I've seen it twice because I went to the same presentation at Lake Como when they had it, and I still haven't heard what's in it for Belmar. You know, you mentioned that that Lake Como residents stand to prevent an average $700 a year property tax increase, but does anyone know what the average amount of property tax savings for Belmar property owners would be? Like, if we're not saving money, like, we're not here to save Lake Como. So if we're not saving money on it, why are we doing it? And why weren't the other 3 boroughs that were, you know, propositioned, Spring Lake, Spring Lake Heights, Wall Township, there was all this money to be saved. How come? And this, I would have liked to ask him why he thinks Belmar is the only town that responded. So, did I miss something, or did they give a number for how much we can expect to save on our property taxes by agreeing to do this? Anyone? I know Lake Como, they're supposed to save 700. What are we supposed to save? So it wasn't discussed. Well, you know, there's got to be something in it for us. We're not here to save Lake Como, so.
If I could offer, what's in it for Belmar right now is a payment, annual payment, if the contract proceeds, of $914,000. That's approximately 25% of our police budget that is currently charged to the taxpayers.
But we're doing 20% more work, so.
I think I answered the question.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sir?
Thank you. Very nice job in running the meeting, by the way. Claire Dyke, 1017 14th Avenue. With the comments, I would like to follow up with commentary given by Janet Grosshandler. I was amazed the next morning. I rode around town. Yes, I love to ride by the ocean. There wasn't one speck of paper, one bottle, one can, 1 ounce of garbage anywhere. Every street in the town was perfectly clean after having all those people in town. So I complimented you profusely.
I noticed that the street sweeper was on the heels of the last person.
Oh my gosh,
In the parade. That was
Right, right over.
awesome job, thank you.
retired sergeant in the Belmar Police Department. I'm just here to make a few comments about the Lake Como deal. And something that I've been listening to all night that I haven't heard, and I don't know if you guys consider this or not. We have one set of ordinances for our town that are a lot stronger than what Lake Como has. I mean, has anybody considered like mirroring the ordinances? Because you can't have our officers going into Lake Como when they have diminished ordinances on noise and stuff like that, and then right across the street on 16th Avenue, we're gonna be writing tickets where there's different ordinances over there. And they have, logistically, they have 9 liquor licenses over there. But once we take over policing, we have no control. I mean, like DJs, for example, they have to hire a couple cops. If we go down there and we need 5 officers at Bar A, I mean, we have no control over telling them they have to pay for 5 officers. And then the next thing you know, almost all that money that we are getting is gonna be eaten up by patrolling down there. I mean, you guys know what it is like on a Tuesday night during the summertime for beat the clock. It is just chaotic over there. So, I mean, that's something that you guys are gonna have to really consider. Belmar has to take over and really, for their financial irresponsibility down there, and no offense to Mayor Wilton, he's been a council president for 5 years. I mean, these are things that you have to be financially savvy about and looking into this, where they got into this problem. I really think that really before we take over, they should give up the whole town. We'll take over the whole town for it. I mean, it's ridiculous for us to just go down there. I mean, they have, me being on the school board, I mean, they have a whole school board down at Lake Como. They have no school. They have to have elections, they have to have a business administrator, they have to have a board attorney, all that stuff costs money. So, I mean, if they're that irresponsible down there, just give up the whole town, and we'll just take that over. But I just want you guys to, consider, there's a lot of logistical stuff before taking over and just taking over for their policing, because, we can go in there, but we have no control over their mayor and council to control their bar situation or anything like that. So, I just want you to think about that, because I haven't heard that tonight. Thanks.
If I could, just the sergeant brings up some really good points, and I'm glad you did, because they are very commonsensical things that have been under discussion with Lake Como for some time. So as the working group proceeds, if the contract happens, those are things that would be discussed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of issues and circumstances that we've considered and continue to consider.
And they have been identified.
Frank Seabeck, 110 Second Avenue. Good evening, Councilman Nicolay, Council. I had a question I was asked me by a neighbor. On the curb construction, we brought in a contractor to do the curbing. And I think Brian McGovern mentioned the fact that we were spending about $80,000 and saving money. But the question that was raised to me, and I thought I'd pass along, was that contractor still required to pay prevailing wage and certified payroll and all those requirements?
Or the curbing it on Ocean Avenue?
Yeah, Ocean Avenue, I'm sorry.
I didn't bring in a contractor.
We did, we brought in a subcontractor to help our guys. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, you still hired somebody to work in town in that capacity, so I would imagine they would still have to perform the standards of contract law.
I haven't looked at it, I don't know. I don't know who the contractor is, I don't know what agreement was made, so I can't answer.
Nicole.
I'd have to pull their payrolls, but I can tell you that prevailing wage is required on public jobs that are publicly bid. I believe that the total amount paid to the contractor is well under the bid threshold. But if you would like to know, I can certainly send me an email and I'll look at it.
I think it was an action or resolution ordinance tonight to throw out the bids. The bids came in too high. Okay. But I also saw it in the 2 payment of bills recently, there have been 2 payments totaling about $22,000 for the contractor so far. So I'm just wondering, I don't know how much of the $80,000 that was talked about was for that or not, but I would imagine that's in excess of the threshold. No?
The vast majority of the work is performed by us and is material.
Okay. Could I send an email to?
Sure.
request
Send me an
that
email,
information?
yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
I'll
much.
reach out.
Have a good night.
Anybody else? for a motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?